Welcome to the Cover 4 podcast. I'm Nolan Kangas alongside Bradshaw, Furlong, Luca, Moia, and Jeff Wall. Guys, again, we're kind of in the rough part of the offseason. Obviously, I guess the big news over the past couple of weeks was Julio Jones getting traded. We had one of our past episodes discussing where we think he could end up. I believe I was the one who said Tennessee is going to be on there, but I like the Chargers fit a little bit better. Doesn't matter. He ends up going to Tennessee, pairing up with A.J. Brown. So if you want to see our thoughts on Julio Jones potentially getting traded, go back, find one of those. But again, like I mentioned before, we're kind of in that dry part of the offseason. So we're going to be talking about some players who really aren't on a team yet, some free agents, where we think they could end up, an ideal fit for them, and then a wild card somewhere what it's kind of out of left field, but hey, it could match up pretty well for that potential free agent. So let's get started. We all picked one free agent, and Bradshaw, you're going to get us started.
Oh, we're starting with the best one available. Yeah. Kenny Vaccaro, formerly of the Tennessee Titans and the New Orleans Saints. Keep that in the back of your mind for later, kids. I'm going to be referencing that in a second. My ideal situation for Kenny Vaccaro is a team that needs him the most. I think would be I think actually a lot of teams could use him, but the Detroit Lions, I think, are kind of like the perfect fit out of the teams remaining. There's not many good contending teams that need like a starting caliber safety. Like I think Kenny Vaccaro can still be a starting caliber safety. We'll get to a contending team that could use him a little bit later, but I'll stick with the Lions. So I was listening to the Athletic Football Show. I mean, one of the only other football podcasts you should be listening to aside from us. That's the only other one we'll endorse on this show. And they had Brad Holmes on, the new GM of the Lions, talking, and he really talked about wanting to build a culture, and him and Dan Campbell trying to find different guys that can build a culture there. And Dan Campbell and new defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn were both with Kenny Vaccaro in the 2016 and 2017 seasons. Aaron Glenn was actually his secondaries coach for both of those seasons, so they have familiarity with Kenny Vaccaro. He had 5 interceptions between those 2 seasons. That accounts for half of his interceptions in his career. So I think that's already, like, it's a good fit right there. Obviously, the Lions aren't going to be a contending team, but again, Vaccaro, a veteran kind of presence, a guy that can come in and kind of set the culture, kind of what Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn, Brad Holmes, what they want to do in Detroit. And then with the incumbent players already there, Tracy Walker and Will Harris, both their PFF grades were just slightly above 50. They were not very good last season. So you already get a guy that can come in and like play his value. It works for Vaccaro too. You can come in, you can get a lot of playing time right away. So it seems to work out for both sides here. I don't know if he'll actually get signed. I know there were like the Panthers have been talking about him. There are rumors about the Falcons at some point. I don't know if the Falcons at this point would be interested after they signed Eric Harris, Deron Harmon, and then they drafted Richie Grant. So I don't know how much they need him now, but it seems like the Lions would be kind of a perfect fit for both sides where, it's a guy they have familiarity with, and it's a guy that can kind of build the culture, and then he can build up his value a little bit more. A wild card team, again, not many contending teams have a need for a safety. So I went with the San Francisco 49ers, who have Jaquiski Tartt back there as kind of their strong safety. Tartt wasn't fantastic last year. He was fine, but the biggest issue is the depth behind him. And Jaquiski Tartt is always injured. He hasn't played more than 12 games in a season since 2016. He's always injured. So Marcel Harris is the guy behind him, and he's not great. Another PFF grade of just over 40 last year. So not very good. So again, a guy to bring some depth. He'll get playing time because based on precedent, Jaquiski Tartt's going to get injured at some point in the season. So he had a chance to, play on a good team, build up some value. And, they just signed Tony Jefferson, not the best fit for that strong safety position. So there's at least, an opportunity for him to get some chances there. And it seemed to like reclamation projects at safety. So Kenny Vaccaro, a 49er, again, not the best fit, but it seems like an option they could look to if they need some depth. If not right now, then maybe during the season, if or when Tartt gets injured.
I think Vaccaro is sort of an interesting case, right? Former first rounder. We've seen him have some decent seasons, but I think the 2 teams you mentioned, he's in that spot where I can be a leader and a solid player on a really bad defense and maybe stand out a little bit, or I can be a safety on a really talented team that I'm surrounded by a good defense. That makes me look a little bit better, and then that leads to a bigger payday in the end. I can't see him getting a multiple-year deal, obviously, but a nice 1-year deal would make a ton of sense. But you're right. Safety is kind of a position where, there's not a lot of teams that are in need of safety. I know Jeff would disagree with that. But I think a player that Luca has mentioned, I believe he's doing an edge rusher. Teams are always looking to add some depth at that position. So, Luca, who do you have, and where's the ideal fit and wildcard fit?
I got Justin Houston. We know what happened in 2014. Literally half of a sack away from tying Michael Strahan's single season sack record. Hasn't had the biggest of success. He's dealt with a lot of injuries, but on the Colts the last 2 years, he had 11 sacks and then 9 sacks this year. And a cool stat actually that I didn't really know until I looked it up. He also forced 2 safeties last year as well. And he's only had 4 in his career. So he got half of them last year. So he still has some potential and can potentially help young edge rushers. And that's why I'm going to put his ideal fit to the Buffalo Bills. And the reason why I'm doing Buffalo is because we've seen in the past them try to really shore up this defensive line. And they drafted AJ Epinesa last year. And obviously they thought that wasn't enough. So they go and they drafted Gregory Rousseau. We all said before the draft was that wild card pick. If he was entering the draft last season, he probably would have been a top 10 pick. But this year, all the surroundings around him, he just fell in the draft, didn't have a good combine, whatever it was, he fell. Can Justin Houston come in and help these young edge rushers? I think he can, and he's still playing at a pretty high level. He also had 2 fumble recoveries as well. So he's a guy that you can have put on your defense, help these young guys develop, and it's not only going to help Buffalo for this year, but it'll help them in the future by helping these young edge rushers as well. And my wild card team, just completely out of the blue, why not the Chargers? Like, they have Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram is gone. Maybe you have him start for a year. Derwin James is coming back, a new head coach. This head coach played with a lot of talent for the Los Angeles Rams. Maybe he can just squeeze every little bit of potential he has left and really turn him into a solid starter for the Chargers, who have to get after Patrick Mahomes this season. And maybe if it's Aaron Rodgers or Deshaun Watson, if the Denver Broncos trade for them, edge rushers are a premium in this division. And I think Justin Houston can help out the Chargers, who are on the brink. I think we'll make the playoffs, but definitely on the brink of being a competitive team and making some noise this season. So Justin Houston to those 2 teams, I think it'd be a really good fit for both.
I think the Bills is a home run. And I think we mentioned Gregory Rousseau, kind of a raw player. He played at Miami and dominated in, I guess it was a redshirt sophomore season, but he was just freaky, right? Like, nobody in the ACC could guard a 6'7" guy with that speed. But I think when these, kind of freaky type of players come to the NFL, they need someone to show them how to be a little bit more polished, right? You see sort of the older players teaching, Joey Bosa what moves they did back in the day. I think it was Tom Haley or whoever who showed Bosa what he likes to do. And now you're seeing Bosa do that with younger edge rushers now. So it's kind of that family of edge rushers just trying to teach everybody. Buffalo needs another guy to help out that defense. Remember a couple of years ago, they were so good. Last year took a step back. They need to get above that to see if they can make a Super Bowl run here. Jeff, you have probably the best free agent available here. So where do you think he, or I guess the ideal fit and then a wild card fit for him?
Okay, so my ideal fit for Richard Sherman, it's a tough one because obviously I think he's going to be the priciest one, and I also think he's only going to want to go to contenders. I don't think he's going to be accepting anything less than that. But, however, I do think that the Tennessee Titans might look a little bit more tantalizing. I think Mike Vrabel is a guy who could use a guy like that has that physicality, has that experience, and their defense just really could use any bit of a boost. You got Julio Jones there. That means he doesn't have to cover Julio Jones. So he doesn't have to cover AJ Brown. So there's benefits to being there. I think it's a fairly easy division to win, and they only need a few pieces like a Richard Sherman. So to me, that's the most ideal fit for him. And just, I think they'll play to his strengths a lot. And I think that he can be a really great fit there. He also, he's a very physical corner too, not just in coverage, but also tackling. And he adds that to the team, which is something I think you could always use at the cornerback position. Bit of a wild card. I think it's very, very wild, but I do think maybe it's just my schematic sort of thing. And maybe me thinking like the whole beef with him and Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks is overblown, is I think he actually could return to the Seattle Seahawks because now I think they need him more than ever. Their division's tough. I think it's getting very, very tough now. And I think that they need everything that they can get. Not necessarily saying that they'll make it to the playoffs and he's going to be the difference per se, but I do kind of see that as like a somewhat like possible fit. And I see that as a possible outcome with him and just the way he plays. And I think they're going to know who he is, and they're going to put him in the best position to do the best he can on defense. And I think, 2 years ago, he played really well. I think they'll bank on that. He can do maybe at least a little bit of that in this upcoming season.
Two interesting ones. I really like, Jeff. You mentioned Tennessee. Their secondary was absolute dog crap last year, right? They go and take Caleb Farley. If you can help out Farley on the opposite side, that would be really nice for them. And Seattle's interesting too, because I was reading up, and I believe in interviews, Richard Sherman has said he's talked to the two teams he's played for about his free agency. So he's clearly talked to Seattle, which you don't think would happen again after that mess, and obviously talked to San Francisco. That's his most recent team. They're going to be competitive, a good defense here. He knows this scheme and everything. So that's certainly interesting. I think Seattle would be really fun if he went back there. For me, this free agent is kind of a wild card in general. Mitchell Schwartz, one of the best tackles in the NFL when he's healthy. There's been talk about him kind of looking at retirement. I believe he's on 32 years old. The Chiefs, that's a competitive team. Patrick Mahomes needed all the help he could get on that offensive line. They still didn't want him. Obviously, they spent a ton of money and obviously used some draft picks to go and get tackles. But I don't think he's going to be back in Kansas City. We know that, if he's even looking at coming back in the NFL. But I looked at a few teams. I wanted teams that made sense money-wise for him. His last contract was making $8 million per year. Don't think he's going to get close to that, but maybe over $5 million, because he's still really, really talented. You look at his PFF grade in 2018, 2019, it was above 84. So he's still one of the best premier tackles on that right side. So my ideal fit is going to the NFC East, Washington. They have the money. The right tackle right now is Cornelius Lucas. He didn't have a poor season by any means, 79 PFF grade, solid pass blocker, not a great run blocker. His grade was actually in the 60s, run blocking. And that's a team that kind of likes to run the ball. Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick, Curtis Samuel is going to be that gadget type of player. I'm sure they're going to get him involved, running the ball a little bit in that offense. And I just think Washington, their defense, we know they're there. They're going to be really damn good. The offense has to keep up with them, and they're going to compete in the playoffs, right? Because I think there's exciting, it's an exciting time for Washington. Fitzmagic's going to be there. They've got some weapons now. We already know Chase Young's going to be the next phenom on the defensive line. But is that offensive line going to hold up? It didn't hold up for Robert Griffin III. We know what happened there. Can they start getting some pieces around there to get that offense moving? We'll see. We'll see. I think that's certainly one of the weak parts of this offense and team in general. Why not go get a premier tackle like Mitchell Schwartz? Now, wild card, this is more, I don't think he'd do this, but I just put it because I think it makes sense, is Denver. He seems like too nice of a guy to stay in division, but if you're offering up big money, why not? Denver has the most money, besides Jacksonville, so they could offer more than anybody. On the right side, they have Bobby Massey, a 70.8 pass blocking grade, not pretty. The left side, Garrett Bowles had a fantastic season, is really coming into his own as a solid tackle in the NFL. Go get Mitchell Schwartz on the right side, whether it's Teddy B, whether it's Drew Lock. Hopefully not. I'd rather die than obviously see Drew Lock play another season and throw inaccurate passes. That was really harsh. Sorry. But that's just how I feel. I think we know Denver's going to have a good defense. They've got the weapons. The running back situation, Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, okay, like that. So it's just a quarterback situation and protecting them. The left side's going to be solid there with Bowles. Can you protect that right side? And I think Mitchell Schwartz would certainly shore that up. So that's what I think as a wild card, maybe out of the blue a little bit. But that's going to do it for free agents. Guys, quick, speedy episode. But I had no disagreements. Sometimes, no offense, Jeff comes with a hot take, and I thought you were going to say Richard Sherman going, to your Bears. But no, I think I like everybody's takes and where there potentially is the ideal fit. The wild cards seem to make sense too. Maybe not my most recent one, but that's going to do it. Cover 4 podcast, guys. We're obviously going to have more episodes coming up. We really are sort of been teasing this stock up, stock down one. And we know Jeff's going to have some takes about maybe Justin Herbert in that one. So look forward for that. And obviously look forward for more episodes and content coming out in the near future for the Cover 4 podcast. Bradshaw, Luca, Jeff, I'm Nolan. It was a quick one. Enjoy.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Lingo Sports and Lingo News for a whole lot more just like this.